like to welcome everyone to our CRLA Modesto office. I'm glad that you all made it here to hear about our exciting news today. My name is Jewell. I am one of the regional directors of Advocacy for California Legal Assistance, and I'm also the directing attorney here in the Modesto office. It's great to have everyone here. We have quite a few speakers excited to tell you about this case and what we've been working on and announce this great success for our community. So I'm going to go ahead and start by inviting Cynthia Rice to the podium. She's with CRLA.
Good afternoon. Thank you again for all being here today. This is, as Jessica said, a very exciting day for us. CRLA has been engaged in the work of advocacy on behalf of students and their parents since our inception in 1966. And today we are happy to announce that that work in the Modesto area has resulted in a settlement that we hope will bring about significant changes to the educational opportunities for African American students, Latino students, and English learners who have for many years now suffered from a substandard education by operation of the application of discipline and transfer policies that disproportionately affected those students, taking them out of their classroom, putting them into intervention centers, sending them home on suspensions, and sending them out of a general education setting and into Elliott, the alternative school, and other county operated alternative schools where they didn't have access to the courses needed to graduate from college, graduate from high school, much less to get into college. Many of the folks that are going to speak to you today are going to talk a little bit about their experiences in the Modesto school system and how they affected their children and how they negatively affected their own sense of self-worth as students at Modesto City Schools, and that's what we want to change. We'll have here today representative parents as well as representatives from Advocates for Justice, a community-based organization that first contacted CRLA a little over a year ago on the heels of a settlement that we had similar to this in Kern County, and said the same thing is happening in Modesto. Students of color are being pushed out. Students of color are being sent to different schools where they don't have equal opportunity, and students of color are being treated differently under the same situation than white students. We had example after example of students who were involved in minor infractions, acting out in front of a teacher, using profanity, having some kind of clothing on that was deemed inappropriate, that were immediately targeted as troublemaker students and really followed through their career at the district and subjected to suspensions, even expulsion proceedings, and transfers out of their school to a different school where they have less opportunity. Having heard those examples, we started looking into the statistics, and we found that if you were an African American student, you were 3 times more likely to be suspended than a white student. If you were 3.5 times more likely to be suspended than a white student. If you were a Latino student who was an English learner, you were 3 times as likely. And if you were an English learner, you were twice as likely to be suspended and sent home and not allowed to complete your school day. Additionally, we found that over the course of the last 4 years, Modesto City Schools actually did reduce their suspension rate, but not with respect to African Americans and Latinos and English learners at the same rate. So again, even though they took steps to address their suspension problem after it was brought to light, those steps did not benefit African American students and Latino students in the same way that they benefited white students. The beauty of this particular coming together of organizations and parents and students is that this group was not satisfied at looking at just the impact on the African American community, just the impact on the Latino community or English learner community, which in Modesto is comprised not only of Latinos, but of many immigrants from Middle Eastern countries and South American countries that have come here recently, all of whom have been more vigorously subjected to discipline, transfer, and push out from the school policy. As a result of the work of this group, assisted by California Rural Legal Assistance, I'm Cynthia Rice, Director of Litigation Advocacy and Training for our statewide program. The lawyers for Committee for Civil Rights, Deborah Escobedo at the far right, and Gibson, Dunn, and Crutcher, represented by Wagner, who is formerly with the U.S. Attorney's Office of the Northern District of California and specialized in civil rights litigation. We were able to bring the district to this table beginning about a year ago when we first made our demands on the district that they needed to pay attention to these issues. It took threatening to sue them and putting actually the details of our demand on their desk, and days before we were ready to file a lawsuit in federal court in December, we gave them one more chance to do the right thing, not to engage in long-range litigation, fighting about things that they knew were true, but to come to the table and find a way to resolve this situation by asking for help. And working with them, they identified an expert of national renown, Dr. Jason Okunufwa, who has done extensive studies on discipline connected with students of color, specializing in discipline related to African American boys, and on the kinds of school systems that promote disparities in discipline versus the kinds of school system teacher training and community engagement that promote keeping all students of color in school. Under the terms of the settlement agreement that was finalized on Friday, May 18th, Dr. Okunufwa will be retained through June of 2021 to look very closely at the practices that are going on in the district now, to evaluate them, including intervention centers, suspension and expulsion processes, and the nature of in-school and out-of-school suspensions, and make recommendations to the district about what they can do to change policies, to change practices, and implement training that will make teachers effective at addressing behavior problems in a manner that does not discriminate, that does not push students out, and increases student investment in their own education, and at the same time promotes a healthy and safe educational opportunity. Dr. Okunufwa will do that over the course of 3 years, first through 2021, first by doing surveying of teachers and students, by meeting with community members, by taking a look at statistics and identifying processes that may be contributing to these disparities. He will then, in January of 2019, recommendations will be made with respect to policy implementation and training that will bring about the change that is so necessary in the Modesto school system. Additionally, as part of the settlement agreement, twice a year, the Modesto city schools will put on a community forum and invite the community, and it's so exciting to see so many people here from the community invested in this issue. But you're going to get a chance again twice a year to come and hear the district talk about what Dr. Okunufwa found, what his recommendations are, and whether or not they're making any progress toward accomplishing the goals that they set for themselves. Additionally, twice a year, we will be getting written reports on their suspension, their expulsion, their intervention referrals, their referrals to alternative schools, so we can keep track of information that isn't necessarily available to the public on an easy basis, to see how they're doing and whether or not this settlement agreement is having the impact that we hope that it has. Finally, several of the students and their parents came forward and agreed to be part of the litigation that we had intended to file in December of last year, because many of them have been subjected to discipline that pushed them out of their classroom. One student was not able to attend her Spanish class 2 to 3 days out of every week she was there because she was sent to an intervention center. Another student was profiled because of the color of the clothing that he wore, exact same clothing as another guy who happened to be white, and he was profiled and eventually pushed out of the district into an alternative school in another district where he excelled. Other students subjected to discipline and suspension for being involved in a situation where he defended a young girl who was hit, and in his defense of that young girl resulted in him being suspended. Again, lost classroom time, while the student who actually hit the girl was not suspended immediately. All of these students came forward, backed by their parents, and they will receive collectively $50,000 to address any remediation that they might want to have to help them make up for lost time. They can be used for whatever they want, but some of the uses that have been most successful in these kind of agreements is for tutoring, after-school programs, etc. All in all, we're extremely excited about what the future can be and will be in Modesto City Schools. We hope that what Modesto City Schools has told us during the course of negotiations will be true, that they are embracing this opportunity to move forward into the future, that they trust Dr. Okonofua and will follow his lead in his direction, and will implement necessary changes. But if they don't, we'll be here. We're going to be watching them. Jessica's not going anywhere. She's going to be here in Modesto, reading those reports, making sure that they're on track, and listening to the voices of you and the other members of the community, both when you speak to us, but more importantly, when you have the opportunity twice a year to speak to the district and tell the district you're doing a great job, or no, you need to do more. So with that, let me introduce Stacy Crosby, who is one of the brave parents that came forward and helped us address these concerns.
Good afternoon, everybody. What I've noticed over the last couple of years being involved with AFJ and the Boys and Girls Club and the Black Student Unions is that more than anything at the core, these kids want to be able to go into a school environment and know that they are understood. And where there is a lack of understanding, there is fear. And wherever there is fear, there is chaos. And that's kind of been the system that our kids have been in. It's been a chaotic educational experience. It's caused emotional chaos, cultural chaos, and educational chaos. And so, as frustrating as it's been watching, not just the child that was involved in this, but my biological children and other kids in the community who call me mom go through these frustrating situations, while the settlement that's been reached is, the kids are, happy about that. But more than anything, the implementation of the things that are going to be taking place that hopefully will decrease the fear and increase understanding will hopefully, I'm hoping that will bring peace to these environments for these kids. And where there is peace, there can be change. And that's the primary thing that we need for these children. A lot of parents, like myself, are frustrated and ready to quit on the school system, but hopefully this will be an opportunity for the district to turn things around and to set an example, not just for other schools in Modesto City Schools, outside of the schools that were involved, but also for the surrounding school districts as well. So this opportunity allows the parents to be able to enforce accountability instead of begging for the opportunity to hold the district accountable. So I'm really excited about what's going on, and I'm really grateful to CRLA and all the other attorneys that have been involved because they've been diligent, just as diligent, if not more diligent, than the parents and students trying to bring about this change and bring attention to these issues. So for you guys' work, I'm really and sincerely grateful on behalf of myself and my family. Thank you guys very much.
And let's see, now we're going to hear from one of the other firms that assisted us in this case. Benjamin Wagner is a partner at Gibson, Dunn, and Crutcher.
Thank you. My name is Ben Wagner. As Jessica mentioned, I'm a partner at the law firm of Gibson, Dunn, and Crutcher. Some of you may have heard my name from being the U.S. Attorney for this district. I was President Obama's appointee as the U.S. Attorney for this Eastern District of California that includes the Central Valley. So as Cynthia said a few moments ago, we started from the premise that the public schools are for everybody, and they are to provide an opportunity for everybody, an opportunity for a brighter future, and that they should be a help up, they should be a stepping stone to the future and not an obstacle to progress for students regardless of their background, their color, or their language. As Cynthia described, we had anecdotal evidence that that was not happening here in Modesto City Schools District, that there were real problems with the way the school treated people of color, Latino students and English learners. We also heard from our clients about situations that reinforce that view. And as Cynthia indicated, we dug into the data and looked at the data historically, not only here in Modesto City School District, but across the country, across the state, I should say. And the data showed that Modesto City School District not only had a disproportionate impact on students of color and English language learners in terms of their disciplinary policies, but they were out of step, they were an outlier compared to other districts around the state. We thought it was a very compelling case, and that's why we were prepared to bring litigation to try to rectify this here in Modesto City School District. We were ready to litigate, but I'm pleased that the Modesto City School District, rather than deny the problem and engage in years of costly litigation that would cost the taxpayers in the school district, instead has decided to be part of the change, part of the solution, to work with us, to rectify this going forward. This is just a start. It's not the end. It's just the beginning, but we are hopeful. We think the school district has done the right thing in embracing the national expert, Jason Okonofua. We have great confidence in him. And in the process, we're grateful that they want to work with us and not against us in terms of making real change here in Modesto for students. I want to thank, it's been a pleasure for me to work in this case. I want to thank Cynthia and the people at CRLA, Deborah and the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights, and also my firm, Gibson, Dunn. There were a number of attorneys in my firm who worked with me in this over a year and a half. We devoted a considerable amount of resources to this, and I'm grateful for my firm also for supporting this effort. So it's been a real pleasure. And as Cynthia said, we're not going anywhere either. This is a start. We're hopeful that this is going to be real change, but if it doesn't, we're going to be there to come back and litigate if we have to. So, thank you.
And so if we can have Ms. Williams join us. Ms. Williams is the president of the Modesto Stanislaus branch of the NAACP.
Good evening. I would like to thank all of you for coming out to support this very eventful day. This is an issue that we have been dealing with since over 1980 as a branch. We've had lots of leadership, Wendy Bird, Frank Johnson, who have also addressed this issue, and we were just getting nowhere. So when I came aboard and found out that Advocates for Justice was involved in this issue and that we at last were going to address this, this was a monumental feat for us, because this is an issue that is long overdue to be addressed. I had an opportunity to meet with Jason last Thursday. We met for over an hour and a half, and I was able to give him a lot of information directly that involves what is happening in public schools with the people who stand before our children, and that these are things that need to be addressed, such as unconscious bias, because when you don't realize what you're doing affects the students you're standing in front of, you continue to perpetuate this downfall of our students. And our students have to be able to come to school and feel like they are treated as equals and treated with respect. And this is what is finally going to happen. Mr. Willard and his family were one of the first families that came to the NAACP asking for help with this issue. We went all the way to Washington, D.C. to address this issue, and it still fell on deaf ears. He, after many years of fighting with Modesto City Schools, Modesto High School, he finally just gave up and moved out of our community, left our state, in fact, in order to get his children an equal education. No family should have to leave their home, their livelihood, to go away from here to get an education. Every child is entitled to an equal education, and I want to thank Advocates for Justice. I want to thank the Dunn firm. I want to thank CRLA and all of the parents who came forward, because it takes real courage for our parents to come forward. When we have litigations, those are the people who get reprisal against them. And we've seen some of that already, that we've had parents who were in this and their students have already suffered. So we need to address the issue. We need to stay together. I am really thankful to see all of you who've come out today to support this. And we have to stay firm with this. We have to be at those board meetings. There's one tonight. They are now having unannounced board meetings. They have these emergency board meetings that people don't even know about. I asked someone here who is very affected by it. She didn't even know there's a board meeting tonight. We have there is a board meeting tonight and a workshop. So we need to stay vigilant. We have to stay vigilant. This is just the beginning, and it's going to take a lot of work and networking together, communication with one another, so that we can stay on top of these issues. I want to thank you again for coming. I want to thank all of the people who have supported our students and our parents and helping to make this change. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Williams. And now we can have some representatives from Advocates for Justice, one of our clients who helped lead this change.
I'm feeling the spirit today, and and that's why there's a spiritual. Joshua fought the battle of Jericho, Jericho, Jericho. Joshua fought the battle of Jericho when the walls came tumbling down. I want to thank CRLA. I want to thank Gibson and Dunn. I want to thank LCCR. I want to thank all the freedom fighters and soldiers, that is the mothers and parents who came forward and fought this fight. This case here is the Brown versus Board of Education in the Central Valley, in Modesto. You all made history. You're going to affect generations to come.
Thank you.
In 1992, I was suspended multiple times, recommended for expulsion. And if it wasn't for my father, Mac Wilson, I wouldn't be here today. He is my Joshua, and he's the one who made those walls came down in my life. With regard to my father, he said, you can make an excuse or you can make it your purpose. And so when I was faced with being kicked out of school, having nowhere to turn, except for my community who took me in, and a father and advocates from this community, many of whom are here in this very room today. But for you, I would not be here today. And so when you talk about making an excuse or making it your purpose, Advocates for Justice was formed to substantially reduce suspensions and expulsions, eliminate education disparities, and end the school to prison pipeline in our community. We know that kids who are kicked out of school, more likely than not, end up in the criminal justice system, end up unproductive, end up facing long sentences without any hope, jobless, and full of despair. You know what, I was watching an animal show the other day, and it was about a herd of elephants. And there was a baby elephant. And the herd of elephant was looking after the baby elephant. And the herd, what the show said is that what that baby needed more than anything was love, support, and education. It didn't say water, food, protection. Love, support, and education. And if a herd of elephants could get it right, you would think a school district could get it right.
That's right.
Okay. And that's what this lawsuit is about. When we talk about Joshua fighting the Battle of Jericho and the walls coming tumbling down, you know, Joshua was out there for 7 days with the Israelites. And they marched around that wall each day. And on the 7th day, they marched around it 7 times. 7 times. And on that 7th time, they brought out the horn, and you heard a great shout from the Israelites. And the walls came tumbling down. The reason that's important is because when myself, Jacq, my father, George Russell, Mr. Johnson, a bunch of other community members came here 7 years ago when they got rid of John Irvin. That was the 2011-12 school year, 2012-13 school year, 2013-14 school year, 14-15 school year, 15-16 school year, 16-17 school year, 17-18 school year. 7 years. 7 years, and the walls are starting to come down.
Yes, thank you. Yes.
Now, I think Gibson and Dunn, LCCR, and CRLA. But I want to thank some of those warrior lawyers. Cynthia Rice,
Yes.
Jessica Jewell,
Thank you.
Deborah Escobedo,
Thank you.
Ben, Jacq, other folks, Jose Padilla, for having us involved. I just want to thank you all from the bottom of my heart. And I'm going to wrap it up because I want to be short. But we live in some difficult times, and we have a long road ahead. But I want to remind you of what Martin Luther King Jr. said. He said, we must keep moving. We must keep going. If you can't fly, run. If you can't run, walk. If you can't walk, crawl. But by all means, keep moving. Thank you.
Well, I'm Jacq Wilson. I'm not as articulate as Jacq, so I've got a chart to explain what I want to do. But 7 years ago, when we first started this in 2012, this was the chart that started it all. And basically, this chart, if you could see, basically shows the end was 2013. And basically, when I came out here, I said the education equity nightmare. And on this chart, you can see there was a total of 414 African-American male students in junior high over a 7-year period. And those young boys were suspended 582 times, okay? Versus white students, there were 2,614, and they were suspended 1,580 times. Still too many. But the reason why this chart was so meaningful to me is that these silent screams kept me awake at night. To the district, these were just numbers. To me, these were real life people who I spoke with. So the reason why that's all important is that flash forward into 2017, 2018, really let's go to 2016, you would have thought that with us coming out here and with us advocating, that the district would have got it right. Well, instead of doing the right thing in 2013, 2014, they stopped reporting in-school suspensions as in-school suspensions, and they just started sending kids to the intervention center because they didn't have to report that to the state. And because of that young man right there, Cedric Wright, we were able to uncover what they were doing. And it was just an epiphany of a moment, because here it was, we were coming, and they were laughing at us saying, why are you still here? Because we're getting the numbers down. But then I was having the parents call me and saying, well, my kids are still being suspended, and we couldn't figure out what was going on until I bumped into Mr. Wright. And he was the young brother, honor roll student, 3.8 GPA, MVP, I think, of his water polo team, star track player and everything. And he got suspended for defending a white girl who was punched by a white boy, and they didn't do anything to him, and they suspended that young man. And so that's when I got involved with Mr. Wright. But my story goes back to 2000, when did I graduate from high school? 1992. And I'll never forget it because, 26 years ago, but I'm going to tell you, sometimes justice takes a long time. Justice doesn't come cheap, easy, or overnight. It's a process. And so the reality is, what always haunted me too is I'll never forget it. I was walking with 3 African American kids, and instead of talking about what college they were going to, they're talking about which prison they were going to end up in. And it bothered me because my white friends were talking about which college they were going to go to. And I always was upset with myself because I didn't say anything. I just didn't. And so when we started Advocates for Justice, my thing was to end that school to prison pipeline. And that's part of the reason why I still wear my high school ring, 1992 Modesto High, to remind me of where we came from. The reason why I bring this all up is you would think with the 7 years of advocacy, all the things we were doing, MCS would finally get it right if a herd of elephants could get it right. But the reality is, look at this. Over a 3-year period from 2013 to 2016, a total of 44,000 kids enrolled in the Modesto City high schools, and those young kids were suspended or sent to the intervention center, which is the same thing as a suspension, 49,353 times. So these are the numbers, okay, but we know the faces, we know the stories, and when it came to African American males over that same period, about 1,679 were either suspended or sent to the intervention center 4,160 times. That's critical classroom time that these kids are missing. Now we wonder why there's a school to prison pipeline? Because our kids aren't in school. And this is only half the story. Because if you knew the story about all the other detentions and all the other things that they're misclassifying, you would be appalled. You wouldn't sleep that night like us. So I'm going to end real quickly by just saying that when we came out here, I was talking about the education equity nightmare. Well, I could finally say today it's finally over.
Yes.
And now Modesto City Schools is going to finally start delivering on its promise of an equal education opportunity for all, which is what the ACLU said that they needed to do back in 2007. But on that note too, I just also want to thank the pioneers, because people see Jacq and Jacq, and we're just not AFJ. It's members like Mr. Frank Johnson, who got me involved in this. Members like Mr. Ricky McGill, like Reverend Crosby, like Debbie Barrera. All these people at some point have gone to a suspension or expulsion. Mr. John Mataka right there, Mr. George Russell, Mr. Mac Wilson. All these people you see in here, they have gone to suspension and expulsion hearings. They have gone to school board meetings. And then, finally, you got to understand, I'm an attorney, Jacq, who's an attorney, and we just knew we couldn't do it all because we do impact litigation and we do a lot of stuff. So we had to bring the big dogs in. You know what I'm saying? We gave them 7 years. So I'll never forget this, and Ms. Rice can tell you, because I saw that current case, and we were driving. I had like 12 kids in the car, and we're going to a Raiders game, okay? And I said, I got to pull over. This is Ms. Rice calling me. So I pulled over on the side of the highway. She could tell you. And we sat and we talked. And she said, you're what we've been looking for. She said, when can we meet? I said, right now if you want. She said, go on to the Raiders game, and then we ended up hooking up really quickly after that. And then, I connected with CRLA, with Deborah Escobedo. Then they brought on Benjamin Wagner and his team. Phenomenal attorneys. And the point that I want to say, and then I'm going to shut up, people don't understand how much time and money and energy justice costs. These folks, you thought we invested a lot of time and money? These people invested hundreds and thousands of dollars. And that's just cost and stuff, but when you talk about their man hours, them coming up from the Bay Area like us to litigate this, and so I know I've been going long. I just want to thank everyone who's ever marched on this quest with us. And like they say, we're not going anywhere. We're going to still be around, and just thank you very much.
Join us. So Deborah Escobedo is the staff attorney with the Racial Justice with the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights of the San Francisco Bay Area.
I've been doing this for 30 years, and this is the first time I ever represented attorneys as plaintiffs. And by the way, Jacq, it's not man hours, it's people hours. It took him like 3 months to stop referring to me as Miss Escobedo. Miss Rice, you remember that? Anyway, I digress. But it's a great honor for me to be here today, actually. I just wanted to maybe raise a couple of statewide issues in terms of, as an education advocate, why whenever I had to deal with a student who was actually excluded from school, why it's such an important issue for me and an urgent issue. So just as a statewide data, students with 1 or more suspensions are 5 times more likely to drop out of school. They're 6 times more likely to repeat a grade, and the worst thing for me is that they're 3 times more likely to have contact with the juvenile justice system. I invite the advocates in this room to take a look at the enrollment data for the juvenile court school in Stanislaus County, and I'd like you to ask yourself which 2 student groups are disproportionately enrolled in those schools. Ask yourselves why they're there, and let's start drawing attention to those students. In any event, again, it is so important with respect to that these issues are so urgent as an advocate. It is important that our children stay in school, that they are in those classrooms, and then they're with their teachers. For vulnerable students group, every day, every hour that they miss class or miss instruction is a day of instruction, an hour of instruction that they will never get back. They'll never recover that. There has been a statewide effort to embrace discipline reform. We need to recognize that. Suspensions and expulsions statewide have gone down substantially, and that's because of a statewide effort by advocates to work with the state to try to reduce suspensions and expulsions. However, but the issue of disproportionality remains, and hopefully Modesto will become a model on how to address issues of race in the context of discipline head-on. Anyway, I've been doing this for quite some time. I've been an education advocate, now I'm a racial justice attorney, which is pretty cool, for over 30 years. And we cannot do this work without the support of parents, students, and the community. So I want to personally thank all the clients, all the families, advocates for justice, and the NAACP for your courage and your steadfast advocacy on behalf of the children of Modesto. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
At this point, we can invite Ms. Barrera, Debbie Barrera, to come to the podium.
Good afternoon, my name is Debbie Barrera, and districts have attorneys. School sites have unions. Us parents that are mandated to send our children to school have who? We have nobody. We have no voice. So we decided to create a voice. And what we created in 2012-13, and I'm going to piggyback with Jacq, is that I interrupted a system. Mine started at the county when they created a school to prison pipeline by way of a military school where they were kicking out our children from Modesto City schools and putting them in a military school. We were led to believe it was military structured, faith-based. I come from Victory Outreach, 35 years. These are our children. I speak for the English learners. My mother, 86 years old, in this county has been documenting immigration for 38 years. She's been working the election polls for 40. I stand generation third. My grandfather in San Jose, he opened up CSO, Joe Gaxiola. He knocked on those doors in Washington and in Sacramento. I stand here, 3 generations. I will not sit idle to a school to prison pipeline where our children have to go, where they don't belong. When superintendents are making $287,000 and giving us this type of service is unacceptable. So I created, along with the community and parents, We Are La Raza, Parents Union, Social Justice Movement, Student Advocates. We are currently in 14 districts, 5 years later. We want to get into all 26. Today is the gateway to hold all districts accountable to what they're doing to our children of color. It is unacceptable. I speak for the English learners, the low income, the fosters. I foster. My last one, Isaiah Pena, came from a 12-year-old. He was victimized by his educators. He was forced out of his home school. He was placed in a military school where they were setting him up for a pipeline. So I decided to create a school to prison pipeline. When behind the scenes I had no clue. I had brothers, Jacq and Jewell. I had Papa. I had Franklin. I had Miss Wilson. And now I have an attorney team that I can say our parents now have justice. Justice has been served because behind the scenes, this is what they give our children. They give them nothing. They give them a Comeback Kid program. Come back, kids. We're sorry we interrupted your education. After 18, let's try it one more time. So they get to milk that same kid twice. When as parents from preschool are mandated to get up in the morning, we never get to make it till 12th grade. Our children, because they're dressed in a certain color, it's called culture. Get to know our culture before you stereotype it. It's called uniting. Our children need a voice. They're in Washington right now screaming for safer schools. We're now saying school to prison pipeline, those walls have come down. And I want to thank each and every one of you that are here, starting with the parents that had no voice. Now you have a voice. I want to thank CRLA because in 2012, 2013, I was turned away. There was nothing that they were going to do with the county, but you did something with the city. So can we go back to the county? My name is Deborah, and I want to thank you all.
Debbie. Okay. And now, if you can bear with me for a couple more minutes, I'm going to say a few statements in Spanish. So de nuevo, muchas gracias a todos por acompañarnos el día de hoy. Como les recuerdo que yo soy Jewell, soy la abogada dirigente de esta oficina y una de las directoras regional de abogacía de asistencia legal rural de California. El día de hoy hemos estado aquí con el gran orgullo de anunciar que hemos llegado a un acuerdo con el distrito escolar de Modesto City Schools. Por varios años nuestros clientes, los de Advocates for Justice, como platicó la señora Crosby, como platicó la señora Barrera, todos han estado luchando por los derechos de los estudiantes específicamente de color, incluyendo los latinos, los afroamericanos y estudiantes que están aprendiendo inglés. Y por los últimos 2 años hemos tenido el derecho de trabajar con ellos. Hemos estado trabajando juntos, estudiando las pólizas y las prácticas del distrito de MCS y específicamente el efecto que estas pólizas tienen en los estudiantes de color. Y lo que miramos nos preocupó demasiado. Estas pólizas estaban afectando a estos estudiantes en una manera que no era lo mismo para sus compañeros americanos, sus compañeros blancos. Junto con nuestra organización CRLA, junto con los otros abogados que nos han ayudado, nos preparamos para demandar al distrito. Ya estábamos listos para demandar al distrito porque no hacían caso después de años que nuestros clientes traían estos asuntos a su atención. No hacían nada. Pero por una última vez, como es nuestra práctica, ofrecerles la oportunidad de tratar de trabajar con nosotros. Y esta vez nos hicieron caso, nos sentamos a platicar y después de estas negociaciones fue el resultado de este acuerdo que hemos anunciado el día de hoy. Estamos muy contentos de la oportunidad que vamos a tener de trabajar con el doctor Okonofua. Como lo platicaron mis colegas, el doctor Okonofua es un experto en estas áreas y tenemos muchas esperanzas que él va a hacer los cambios que son necesarios para nuestra comunidad y para los estudiantes de Modesto City Schools. Les agradecemos de nuevo a todos por acompañarnos el día de hoy. Les agradecemos a nuestros clientes que han hecho todo lo posible para llamar atención a estos asuntos y por trabajar con nosotros para hacer el cambio necesario para nuestra comunidad y para el futuro de nuestra comunidad, que es de nuestros niños. Muchas gracias a todos por acompañarnos.
As a final shout out, this is something that's become very important to me in my career as an advocate for workers as well as students and parents. We are lucky to have some of the parents and organizational plaintiffs to speak here today, but I wanted to give a shout out to everyone else who came forward and allowed us to use their name when we told the Modesto City Schools that we were going to sue them if they didn't make things right. And so thank you to Stacy Crosby and Ariana Davis, Deborah Barrera, Isaiah Pina, Patricia Scruggs, Giovanni Scruggs Hutcherson, Ricardo Blanco, Cedric Wright, Julia Wright, Mac Wilson, and of course the Modesto NAACP Advocates for Justice. Mac Wilson, who is going to be our taxpayer plaintiff. Without all of these people bringing their voices forward, we wouldn't be here today. And thank you all for this extraordinary support coming out here to listen to this. We look forward to seeing you at the community meetings coming up.
Yes.
If there are any questions about the settlement agreement or anything else that we can answer, we've got a whole panel of us just waiting to answer them.
Yeah, you mentioned interventional centers. I guess they're the different high schools. What are they, and what goes on there, or what doesn't go on there?
That's a really important question. As the Office for Civil Rights and to a certain degree the California Department of Education turned a closer eye to districts and their suspension and expulsion practices, districts made a lot of changes. Unfortunately, not all of them had any substance to them. And one of the things that happened at Modesto City Schools, and we believe is happening actually throughout California, is that there has been a change in discipline approaches from taking students to the principal's office and suspending them with due process and a right to defend themselves, to a teacher being able to send a child out of their classroom to a so-called intervention center for the duration of that class, and sometimes for longer, depriving them of the educational opportunity without any due process. They don't get a chance to challenge that. They don't get a chance to make up the class time. They're merely sent to an intervention center, which is a classroom to a great degree without instruction and without any meaningful opportunity to improve your behavior. An intervention center is supposed to be a place where someone gets a little bit of counseling, an ear to listen to if they're having a little trouble coping in that classroom, some advice about how to interact with a teacher or another student. But that's not what was happening here in Modesto City Schools. That's not what's happening in many districts throughout the state. What is happening is because they don't have to count those referrals to intervention centers as suspensions, suspension rates in those schools are dropping dramatically, and those disciplinary measures are being hidden. Part of what we have asked Dr. Okunafua to do in the settlement agreement is look at that very process in Modesto City Schools and design an intervention that truly intervenes in a child's behavioral issues and helps that child move forward.
So basically, if I got this correct, the intervention centers are kind of like the holding tank at the county jail.
Yes.
Before
Yes.
they put you in there, before they're going to put you in the main line.
That's right.
So in other words, these children go into this intervention center where they have no rights, they get no learning, and basically, eventually they're going to be out of school and they're going to be in the criminal justice system. So it's kind of like the holding tank at jail before you go into the regular jail. That's the way I look at it. I got to make stuff a little simpler. I hope you understand.
No, you got it right.
Well, what I found in Johnson going to some of these suspensions and actually having a career as an educator and principal is that they are basically using education 4900K, which is really defines what you can't use anymore. The rule says that a teacher can suspend a student out of their classroom, but they have to go to the principal. And the teacher has to actually set up arrangement with the parents so they can actually have what they call the SST, the student study team meeting. None of that never did happen at Modesto City Schools. Along with that, when you look at, because I was on other committees, when you look at the people that was getting suspended, quite a few of those students was getting suspended by the same teacher. And that should be looked at. So that's what you call stacking. So they were stacking it on the students. And when you look at the 4900Ks and the defines, and you see that a student goes into, they call them in-school suspensions and study halls, that student would be in that class for suspension, but for other classes that they were perfectly fine, making A's and B's, they would be there all day. To define them from the education of the other classes, which was always illegal.
That's exactly what we found, and one of the ways that the settlement agreement addresses that is it requires that the Modesto City Schools keep data about all of those referrals, including the grounds for the referrals. So we're going to know every single one of those teachers that throws that out, and the total minutes per day that a student loses as a result of being sent to an intervention center. Right here, yeah.
You made it very clear that it starts in the classroom with the teacher. One major problem is the cultural diversity starting at HR with the hiring practices. Students aren't represented culturally in these classrooms. If I've attended elementary schools where there were no African Americans or Hispanics, nowhere, not even in the office with the secretary. Some of your high schools are really unsupported, diverse culturally. So when a student does have a problem, there's no one in the system in that area that can actually counsel or talk to the child. So HR in most cases is not culturally diverse. So there's a problem with getting different cultures involved and hired into a school system if the system's set up to keep them out.
I think that's an excellent point, and again, a pattern that we see throughout the state in districts like Modesto City Schools. The settlement agreement doesn't address that specifically. However, Dr. Kunafua has looked at those issues in his analysis of other districts around the country. And we expect that to be an issue that comes into play with his analysis and in his evaluation of responses to parent and student and teacher surveys. Yeah, right here.
First of all, I think Jacq Wilson would be the first to say that it's not about them. They've worked too hard for this. But I would like to offer a parenthetical pause to say that human survival has been predicated on Charles Darwin's theory of self-preservation. But their sacrificial service has brought us to another place, that self-preservation is not the first law of life, but other preservation is the first law of life. And I just want to pause and say we appreciate Jacq and Jacq for taking their calling in this matter very seriously. Our children, we found that whenever one of them have a challenge with the school system, or the law, whatever the case may be, 85% of them are in our churches or affiliated in one way or another with our churches. Without sacrificial service like that, we'd be in a mess. And so I just thank God for them, those dynamic duo.
I have the honors of working with the parents. And I'm in, so far, 22 schools through Modesto City School Districts. I currently have 2 families right now that are complaining that their children in the junior high level are being exited. Last week was a prime example on one. When does this take effect to where I can start reassuring parents or start educating parents? When will we be able to, or can I still bring them here? Is the suit still open? How is all that going to work now?
Certainly, if you have a case where a student has been disciplined, you think inappropriately, send them here. If we can't help them, we'll do some screening and see if we can refer them. We have certain limitations on who we can represent. But as we all said, we're here, we're invested in this, not because it's something to talk about on TV, but because it has to do with the kids that we serve. That we went to college to go to law school for, that we went to law school to come to CRLA for. Because I have to say, let me second what you said about Jacq and Jacq, and say the same about Deborah. Working on this case, I have been working with civil rights leaders, and I bow down to them, and their devotion and their commitment to this community humbles me. And everyone who's here knows that and shares in their commitment, their value, their investment in this community, and that's what's going to make a difference.
It's also my understanding that the experts are already on board.
They're on board already?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, he's already on board. He started May 1st. Right,
Yeah, 2 things. One thing is, with all of these hundreds and thousands of hours that the youth were spending in these intervention rooms, the schools were still getting paid for that child being in school and learning all day. So just wanted to make that comment.
That's a really important point.
And the other thing is, I noticed that you talked about, and several people talked about, keeping kids in school and keeping them in school safely. Well, with all the recent things that are happening with gun shootings, kids dying, there's been 200 incidents of gun violence in schools. Will that keeping kids in school and keeping kids safely in school be addressed by the settlement?
Not directly. Here is what I think. I think that part of the reasons that we can't have confidence in the safety of our children in our schools is that our schools don't embrace us as parents, as students, as members of the community. And when I look in this room and I see all of these people invested in what's going to happen in Modesto City Schools, and I review the YouTube videos of the school board meetings that you all attend, the vigilance is here. You guys are the posse. You are going to keep these guys accountable. And on issues like school safety, on issues like what to do about guns, not only in the school, not in the county, in the state house, your voice has to be heard. And this, use this as an example of how raising your voice on those issues can result in change. It's going to take a while. I wish I could tell you that none of that bad stuff's going to happen to any of those kids for the end of this year. I can't say that. But I can say that someone is going to be informed about that and then come back and provide a solution.
That's right.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Just, first of all, I just want to add my praise to the chorus, to all the plaintiffs, the courageous students and their parents, and especially our warriors like Jacq, definitely all CRLA and all the partners, and WAGNER for running that. It's more like a long-term marathon. Some of the folks took us to the finish line like you big dogs. But I had a couple of questions about what happens next, and one question about just before, so I can understand the discipline. Am I to understand that the suspensions that were in the intervention center, did they get used and counted towards, eventually suspending somebody, like a progressive discipline, even though it wasn't counted? And so that's one question. And then the other two questions just have to do with how many, with the reports that are going to come twice a year from Dr. Alcono.
That's pretty good.
Are they going to be available, online, to the public? And the number of times that they're meeting is going to be twice a year. Is that at least twice a year? Or is it going to, like, if there's a demand from the community to have meetings more frequently, for more frequent check-ins, and more updates on the progress of the because I'm gonna be honest with you. The reason I say this is because I worry that these reports, like many others, although this one might not happen, that some of these reports end up becoming reports and then they don't fully get implemented either because of funding or whatnot, which is a huge reason to not implement these things. So anyway, those are my
great. First on the reports, there's no limitation on what we can do once we get the reports. No confidentiality agreement in this settlement agreement. I had not thought of posting them on our website, but that's certainly something that we can do. And the district will post and make available the formal reports that it does for the community meetings on their website as well as part of the settlement agreement. With the suspensions, if I remember, so there was actually a specific example of this. We had a student who was, we thought, suspended, and it ended up not showing up in his record. And when we found out about it, they said, oh, no, that was just a referral to an intervention. We didn't send him home. Nonetheless, all of his teachers thought he hadn't been suspended, and he was treated like he was suspended. But a referral to an intervention center doesn't show up on a student's record as a suspension. It shows up in a separate database as a disciplinary referral.
Cynthia.
The reason I ask is because, like, when I was growing up, if you get suspended, I think once, it's like, bad.
Yeah.
And if you get suspended 2 times, but then the 3rd time, like, you were going to get expelled, or like the 4th, but it was progressive. And so the reason I'm asking is I wanted to have a better understanding of I would guess you say the the suddenness of the impact of an expulsion if they don't have a suspension on their record
Right.
leading up to that.
And one of the real concerns we have about this is that there was no written policy about the intervention that parents could refer to, that students could refer to. There was no progressive anything. It was pretty much anarchy and left to complete and total unfettered discretion of the teachers.
And I would just add that the important part about all this too is that the state of California requires school districts to report both in-school suspensions and out-of-school suspensions, and you can find that data on a place called DataQuest. And they really don't make a distinction. It's still a suspension under the Ed Code. And Modesto City Schools went, I think, from 2,000 in-school suspensions to 0 the following year. And why? Because they're intervention center, you're not counting it as a suspension.
So is that a change in behavior, or is that a masking?
Power of the pen is what I call it.
My last question had to do, is there going to be opportunity to have more frequent community biannual meetings?
Right. All we could get were 2. We have at least a couple of meetings with council as well. I would say that some of you may be interviewed by Dr. Okonofoa in connection with this. Many of you will get surveys in connection with this. Say that on the survey. And the other thing is, your vote counts. I mean, it's a matter of this district is responsible to you not because of this settlement agreement, but because they are your elected representatives and they're supposed to do their job with respect to your kids. And so ask them, and we will back you on it. We will facilitate it whatever we can. We can't force it under the terms of the settlement agreement, but we will certainly try to do whatever we can to facilitate more meetings.
Ms. Rice, that was Councilmember Tony Madrigal, so when you say your vote counts, your vote will count.
Thank you for making sure I didn't put my foot in my mouth.
I just, from a perspective of local government, I just want to share. To me, this is really important because one of the big complaints that we get from local employers, whether they're our local canneries or our emerging small businesses, one of the big complaints that we get is that we don't have enough of an educated workforce. And I feel that obviously the school to prison pipeline is one of the biggest barriers to having an educated workforce, graduating high school, moving on to college, and actually coming back to this community. So the whole school to prison pipeline here at the local level obviously makes students want to get out of here and not come back. And I want them to come back, and I want them to be part of our workforce.
We at the CRLA actually don't limit it to school to prison because it's not just about keeping our kids out of prison, right? It's about making sure they succeed. And what this whole process is a school to nowhere pipeline.
And one thing
doesn't give them a chance.
And one thing I'd like to iterate on is the fact that these suspensions deny many things that are in the Ed Code. You cannot suspend a child without alternative methods. And they're doing these suspensions without any alternative methods because it's we moved the word, so they're getting away with many things. So when your child is suspended, what alternative methods did they put before that suspension? And that's something that's not being addressed.
Right. And one of the things is there's not a lot of specificity in this settlement agreement about issues like that. And that is because we've been through a couple of these at this point in time, and we've realized that when you're dealing with someone with the reputation, the experience, and the success rate that Dr. Okonofoa does, you don't necessarily want to dictate to him what he's doing. But when we spoke to him, Deborah and I spoke to him about those issues, they resonated with him. He knew what we were talking about. He identified ways to look at that from his research. And so we hope that with the district's support, both financial and we hope with their heart, he will make a real difference on all of those issues like that, because that's what he does. He looks at issues that keeps kids out of school.
And I also just want to add with respect to the doctor is that we specifically asked him his understanding of Education Code 48900K, which is disruption and defiance. And he got it immediately.
Yes, yeah.
And in fact, I was reading one of his articles where he talks about a disruption in terms of that, and also with respect to African American children and students of color.
And if you Google him, you'll get his Vita. It's wonderful. It really is.
And all of this information is research-based. So he has done extensive research, and I felt very comfortable with him and confident that he knows what the issues are, and he is going to be very clear and concise about what we need to do as a district to improve and do better services for the students and do equitable service for all students.
And even though he got his doctorate from Stanford, okay, because he's at Cal right now.
Jessica, why don't you take one more?
Could I?
So just very quickly, so the intervention rooms, they're continuing as of now until there's another discussion. So there's no moratorium that's going to be done because the same issues are going to persist.
We haven't included greater reporting responsibilities for them. We have struggled with the intervention concept because, you know, actually there are some experts out there who have really identified this as a meaningful way of intervening in students' behavior. The problem is that it has been completely compromised by the way it was implemented here.
And there are additional provisions if a student is referred to an intervention center, a parent has to be notified within 24 hours. There are requirements with respect to what kind of personnel should be in the intervention center. I think some additional requirements.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And there's going to be another position opening up in the intervention centers as well. And once all of that comes about, I really want to encourage members of the community, like those of you who are here and maybe have the opportunity to work during those school hours, to apply for those positions, because there's a training that has to be gone through, and it's for those of us in the community who care about our kids, because like you said, there's no guarantee that our children are going to be safe, but I know that I would feel much better if one of the members of my village are in these rooms that are targeting the lack of success that we see happening amongst our kids. So we can say that we're concerned about their safety, but at the end of the day, it really comes down to what are we going to do about it.
Right.
So when we have opportunities like this position that's opening up, we need to be the ones that are stepping in and filling those positions so that we can look out for our own.
And there's another provision in the settlement that also addresses the ed code. There's a bunch of lawyers talking about ed code provisions, but we do have a provision that says to the extent that an intervention center referral falls within the definition of either a teacher suspension, an in-school suspension, and there's another ed code provision that they have to be reported pursuant to the directions of the California Department of Education. We'll have to monitor that.
Okay, but since I was on the committee, that's not happening. And what they're basically doing at Modesto City Schools is that they have a list of all the students that been suspended, Hispanics and blacks. Usually you find the same people being suspended all the time. But what they're basically doing is that they're not suspending that student, they're just keeping that student, putting them in intervention or sitting them in independent study. And so therefore he will not show up. And the reason why they don't show up, because, and everybody should know about, LCAP, is that the county is the watchdog over the schools for the suspension and expulsion. So by not submitting that, then the county cannot see those people. So somebody needs to develop and be on that committee where they can actually see all of the students in the suspension and expulsion, because you will find quite a few special ed students that actually are getting suspended, but you have education, special ed law, where they don't even supposed to be there in the first place. So you need some experts in that area to actually give you the information, because I'm going to share something with you, but they got the stuff.
And again, that is one of the reasons that so much of this settlement agreement focuses on data collection and reporting to us. They didn't have to, and they didn't report those intervention referrals to suspension, so nobody saw them. You wouldn't believe the fight we had to go to get that data through public record requests. And then we had a pro bono organization actually do that analysis that you were talking about for us. So the settlement agreement builds in that data reporting. We'll get the first reports, I think, in September. In the meantime, you all need to watch, and you need to tell us. What do they say? If you see it, say it. If you
See something, say something.
That's right.
That's
Can I
right.
say one last thing? Real quickly, and so you guys know, Advocates for Justice, we meet every month, and we work in close conjunction with them as well as the other groups, the NAACP, with We Are La Raza. So come out to our meetings. If
Yes.
you're not on our mailing list, come up to me and I'll give you our contact information. Our next meeting is going to be on June 25th, but right after this, if anyone at 6:30, we're celebrating tonight.
Yes.
We have pizza, we have wine, we have champagne. Over at 608 Spencer, we want everyone to come and enjoy it with us. And so some of the attorneys have to get back to the Bay Area, so I think we need to wrap this up because a lot of them have to be at court at 8 o'clock in the morning. But again, anyone who wants to come over, they have additional questions, concerns, please come over there. We'll give you the contact information, and believe me, no one's going anywhere, so you'll be able to get us.
Yes.
Is the school board meeting open to?
Yes, it's open to the public today.
Yes, it is. Yes.
Jacq, I think we forgot a question that was directed to Mac Wilson. Are you sure Jacq was not also called to preach?
Before we leave, let's get a prayer.
Yes.
Thank God. Got God. Carlton, if you come, you leave in prayer. I can leave. Let you do it this time.
Father, we just thank you right now for this opportunity to gather here and to accept the responsibility to not leave this world the way we found. We pray right now that you will bless us with your own vision for us. Keep us in the name of your matchless Savior, Jesus. We say amen.
Amen.